Accordingly. Thank you. Please behave accordingly in the chat, in the video, and so on. And so warmest welcome once again. Another practicality is that we are going to share the recording, the slides with you post-webinar, and so you will receive a follow-up package. And you can see that in the meantime, I also managed to put up my slides. Yes, so speaking of exchange, let's have a brief look at what is on our plate for this morning. Yes, so the idea behind the webinar is like the core part of presentations will be coming from our guest speakers. So it's my absolute pleasure to greet Dr. James Morris in the room from Science Europe, who is going to provide a kind of a bird's-eye perspective of action plans and funders and research culture. And followed by James' presentation, we are going to see short interventions from free funding representatives of free funding organizations who will reflect on the exercise, share a little bit sneak peeks behind the scenes of how their organizations proceeded with their action plans, how the background work, consensus building, and so on looked like. So it's my absolute pleasure to greet this morning here with us Kata-Riina Valosaari, Research Council of Finland and Akatemia of Finland, Dr. Matthias Kiesselbach and Anna Christa from the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, so the German Research Foundation, and Georgios Papanagnou from the European Commission. Dear panelists, almost welcome to this webinar. And just as importantly, we will have about half an hour the webinar to hear about your reflections on action plans, your progress, your priorities, possible bottlenecks, but also possible support to each other. So I'm very much looking forward to this part as well. Right. Before we switch to the panelists, I'm going to very briefly share some context for action plans in general. So I think you are well aware of this if you are here. CoARA is uniquely action-oriented in the sense that the signatories of the agreement and members of the coalition do not only just endorse the shared direction of the reform, the shared principles, but they also agree by signing this agreement to take the agreements and commitments home to their organizations and implement them at home. And what's more, also share the progress on this implementation within each other, hence the mutual learning in CoARA. So it comes with two major milestones, and I think today's webinar we are going to focus on the first one. That is, as you know, 1 year from signing the agreement, we expect an action plan shared by your organization in which you focus on the starting point. That is, how your organization started to bring the agreement to your organization, where is the starting point, and what major milestones you put forward in 5 years time frame implementing them and changing your processes, practices, tools relevant to the reform of research assessment. We set 5 years because of the second milestone that you can see. So from 5 years from signing the agreement, we expect to receive self-assessment updates or second action plans from you, where the emphasis is obviously not on the starting point any longer, not strategic planning any longer, but rather looking back. That is, how the first round of implementation went in your organizations. What are the concrete changes that you could implement? What went well? What was easy? What's the progress that's been made? And what are the possible bottlenecks that are still yet to be addressed? Okay, so to this end, we defined a framework in the early days of the coalition. And here are a couple of principles that I wanted to highlight to you as a kind of a pretext for the presentations afterwards. One of the major principles for the exercise has to do with autonomy and context. So we know very well that you as a member or signatory organization are the best positioned to know how the implementation of the 10 CoARA commitments makes sense in your organizations. So there is a trust-based approach, therefore, and we expect also a great diversity in action plans. The other important criteria is sharing, or principle is sharing action plans to enable mutual learning, to mutually inspire each other, which is going to happen very soon as part of this webinar, and also to develop a kind of a public accountability of your organization to your grantees, to your contributors, to your reviewers, to your fellow funders. The autonomy principle also means that the steering board has a limited role in reviewing or reflecting on action plans on the level of individual organizations. However, a little bit later, I will show you some sneak peeks of certain ways of how we keep track of the evolution of the corpus of action plans and what kind of analysis methods we have in place. Here are some guiding questions that might sound familiar to you from the guidance document that we provided. So one of the most important starting points are the values, your institutional values, how they map priorities for your reform into priorities in your reform journey. What are the key challenges? Which processes will your organization would like to undertake? What kind of criteria tools are at your disposal for that? Very important when we are looking at the structure of action plans to see how the commitments are individually addressed by your action plan, what resonates strongest with your organizations, what is the biggest challenge, what are less. We know that, for instance, commitment 4 is obviously less relevant to funders. And how are you involving other stakeholder groups? Okay, here I just collected a couple of tokens for action plans. We published guidelines in October 23, I think, that you can find on the CoARA website. We also published the due dates of your organizations, each CoARA signatories action plan due dates and links for those organizations who already submitted their action plans. Speaking of which, as for inspiration, we invite you to browse the Zenodo collection, where we keep track of action plans. Importantly here, if your organization action plan is not linked to this collection, it's difficult for us to keep track of it and highlight and proudly present it on the CoARA website. So it's an important practicality. It's my pleasure also, like we have some double agents among the panelists because they are not only presenting action plans of their organizations, but they are also co-chairs of the Improving Practices in the Assessment of Research Proposals Working Group of CoARA, which is composed of research funders. So I'm sure that they also provide resources and advice that are relevant for action planning as well. And we are aware that intense action planning support work is also ongoing in national chapters. To finish with, I also wanted to give you a kind of bird's eye view in terms of statistics. So out of the 57 funder signatories, we received 14 action plans as of yesterday, 15 as of this morning. I just came across the first Canadian action plan this morning from the Canadian National Research Funder, interesting one. And just wanted to finish my presentation with a big shout out of those organizations, those first 14 organizations who are funders and supported their action plans. They are really trendsetters in the exercise. And if you are interested, in collaboration with CNRS, we are developing two types of analysis platforms of the action plans. One produces the kind of data that you can see here. Another one is an interactive keyword search based on the full text of action plans. So if you're interested about these kinds of line of analysis meta reflections, we can also discuss this during the Q&A. But now I think it's better to give the floor to our second speaker today, who is James Morris, Dr. James Morris from Science Europe. James, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Erzsébet. I will just share my screen, which I hope you can all see now. I'm very happy to be here talking about what I think is a really important aspect of the research assessment reform process, a key aspect of CoARA and of being a CoARA member. I was privileged to have been a part of the drafting team of the agreement, and I think the rationale for action plans at the time of drafting was to encourage the bridging between an agreement on shared principles and the promotion of practical actions, and to do so on a time frame that maintains the momentum that has been driving this and continues to be driving this initiative forwards. I also want to take the opportunity to thank those funding agencies that have also already published action plans. As Erzsébet said, you're the forerunners and the role models in this. And just speaking from the Science Europe perspective, I think we're already learning lots from what you are proposing and what you are planning and actioning. So Science Europe has also published its action plan, but I'll not be presenting that here today, as we're an association and we don't conduct any forms of assessment ourselves. I think our action plan is not particularly interesting in comparison to others in this context, particularly those that will be presented a bit later in this webinar today. And I will say, however, that having been an author of our action plan, I recognize how much effort it can take and how tricky it can be to have a thorough and strategic discussion at an organizational level, and that these take time to draft and they also take time to get signed off. And so, although I think it's really important for the coalition as a whole that organizations do get their action plans done in a timely manner, I think I recognize the challenges associated with that. And I wanted to say here that one of our roles at Science Europe in supporting the reform movement and the coalition is to help support our members in their action planning, and that we also open up that offer to other organizations across CoARA as well. So please feel free to reach out to me, to Science Europe, if you have any questions or want any information about the process of action plans. I think a further reminder, as Erzsébet said, that one of the key principles of the action plan process is that it's a mechanism to share information with other coalition members and the wider research and innovation community, and that this should be related to the specific direction and context of your respective organizations. I was at a workshop just on Tuesday talking about CoARA, and a question came up as to how deep action plans should go into organizational processes, policies, and missions. And I think it's important to emphasize here that signatories really have that autonomy to use and present action plans that are most useful and relevant to their own contexts and their own specific positions on the reform journey. So as Erzsébet said, this is not a one-size-fits-all exercise. That's a question that we often get, and I think that's worth emphasizing here. I also think that the concept of action plans speaks to some of the recommendations that we at Science Europe had made towards research assessment systems already back in 2020 and have been relevant to a lot of our discussions in recent years, particularly around transparency, self-evaluation and monitoring, the sharing of good practices and lessons learned. And these recommendations and our work in general are framed with a view to being as relevant to the internal processes of funding agencies as well as the external ones. So the collection of action plans are key to what Science Europe hopes to contribute to the reform process, both through our members and research organizations more generally. We hope to be able to amplify the sharing of information, determine where international alignment may be of interest, promote collaboration where we see common themes or avenues being proposed by research organizations, and advocate and conduct outreach to the wider research and innovation community, as well as the general public, as to why research assessment is a key component of a well-functioning research ecosystem and what funding agencies, both public and private, are doing to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of their policies and practices. And I think this is really key. We do some work on outreach, but I think we really want to promote the important work that many of your organizations are doing, often in the background, often not communicated or with a light shone on it, but it is really important to the functioning of our research systems. So we do this also through our relevant expert groups within Science Europe. One of the things that we're currently working on with our working group on research culture is to look into how the policy and practice changes that are being proposed by CoARA members can influence and drive positive research culture change more generally. And we hope that will be of added benefit to the reform movement as we hear more about what your organizations are planning in terms of your reform journeys. So on the balance of promoting and supporting diversity while also aligning at the right level, I really like the phrase that both CoARA vice chairs, Lizzie Gadd and Karen Strubantz, have coined: as aligned as possible, as flexible as needed. I think this speaks very much to Science Europe's own perspectives as well. It's not about pushing alignment everywhere, in fact, far from it, but it's about alignment where it is beneficial. And in order to understand where that alignment may be beneficial and where flexibility remains important, we need to understand what your organizations are engaged in, which specific aspects of the reform process you're most interested in. And I think the CoARA working groups and also the national chapters do play a key role here. But CoARA members as a whole cohort, their directions and their activities can only really be captured through these action plans. And I think once we get to nearer to a full set of action plans from the CoARA members, this will be really the best window we have into where we can think about what we can align on and where we need to promote flexibility. As Erzsébet already briefly mentioned, I think there is some important work being done in the context of the CoARA Boost project and led by CNRS in France. They're developing a couple of platforms that will be helping in bringing to life the information presented within CoARA action plans and providing analysis mechanisms. And I've been lucky to have been involved in some of the testing for one of these platforms. And I think it will be a really powerful tool to help all organizations in promoting their work. It will be useful for policy making and policy implementing processes, and also a wealth of information for research on research purposes. But of course, this also depends on having a good number of action plans present. So another reason to promote your organizations to share your action plans with us. I think the collective benefit of analysis tools like this will really help push the reform process forward. And then finally, taking this globally, I think action plans can also provide us with some insights into the regional trends within the research assessment reform movement. We know anecdotally from some of the work we do within Science Europe and also in the context of the Global Research Council that sometimes national systems and regions have different focuses and different rationales for joining the research assessment reform movement. And I think these are really interesting to understand and can be a key driver of international collaboration, cooperation, and collective advance. And of course, this is all in support of knowledge advancement and enabling the quality and impact of research that is funded by your organizations. I think that's a common mission and a common rationale for joining the research assessment reform movement. And it's a mission that benefits everybody in our global research system. And just finally bringing that back to our work on research culture at Science Europe and how we ground our work in shared values. When we say that these values are both relevant to research processes, activities, and outcomes, but also the research management and governance activities that your organizations are involved in, we see that action plans are a clear example of how research organizations can promote and show that values like openness and transparency and collaboration, even care and collegiality, are being applied internally within your organizations and across your internal processes, as well as externally towards your research communities. And that your organizations are really driving this reform of research assessment movement. And I think with that, I'll end there and hand back to Erzsébet.
Thanks a lot, James. So I would encourage you not to forget your questions. If there is a likelihood for that, then please feel free to put them in the chat. And in the meantime, it's my absolute pleasure to give the floor to Kata-Riina Valosaari. Kata-Riina, please.
Thank you very much and good morning all. So I'm Kata-Riina Valosaari from the Research Council of Finland, and I'm head of scientific review and evaluation there. And I have been working with this responsible researcher review process and development since 2018 at the council. So I hope that you can see my slides. Yes, great. Okay. So I think when the discussion at the Research Council started, it was 2018, and we started to think that we really need to reform the research assessment. And the discussion behind it was starting from the researchers themselves, the researcher community, and we saw and heard that the research culture was experiencing rapid change. And it was caused due to varying factors like research and the whole discovery process was changing due to a huge amount of data nowadays, career paths and diversity of research tasks and required skills were more varying than before, ever before. The outputs, datasets and tools were renewing and new tools were developed all the time and so forth. So the whole culture was experiencing change. And we also heard very strong message that research assessment is shaping and directing research careers and the research itself significantly. And it's a huge responsibility from our side on how we do the review of the research and research careers. And for these reasons, we see that we need to continuously improve our review practices and match to these changes. And to do that, it's a common work, it's international work, because we research and science is an international community. We cannot do it alone. So that was behind all this thinking, which started very strongly, I think, five to 10 years ago. And here you can see the key milestones on our path towards the CoARA Action Plan. And nationally in Finland, the discussion and the debate was led quite strongly by the Federation of Finnish Learned Societies. And they started a national preparation of the national recommendation and a commitment towards the responsible researcher review. And we joined this community very actively, and it started 2018, and quite quickly afterwards we signed the DORA declaration at the council. And year after, the national recommendation was published, and we also joined that. And that national recommendation already built a very strong ground for the responsible researcher review principles. And so in 2021, we actually started to implement these principles already throughout our research funding practices. And actually these principles in our national recommendations, they are very well aligned with the CoARA and ARRA core commitments already. And then when the CoARA community started, we joined also the preparation of the ARRA. And then when it was possible, we signed the agreement quite quickly. It was possible. And next year, 2023, our council renewed our strategy, and also these responsible principles are now built in our strategy as well. And then next year, 2024, we published our CoARA Action Plan, which actually reflects already quite strongly what we had done before. But of course, there are things that we are still improving and what is still to be done. And now I will a little bit walk you through about these our implementing of the CoARA commitments, and also to give you a chance to see the new strategy. And I would like to start with the strategy. And the mission for our organization is to open up new avenues for excellent, responsible, and high-impact research. And the core values behind all this work is openness, transparency, reliability, equality, and non-discrimination. And these are actually the same values that are behind CoARA. And our very ambitious goal is to ensure that through this strategy, the Finnish scientific community is a pioneer in responsible science. And what kind of effects these commitments are to our actual work is here in the second slide. So the review process at the Research Council of Finland, I apologize for the previous former name of the organization still here. So the high-level international peer review is our key tool for identifying the best and most promising projects. And we are working as transparent as possible. So all the criteria are considered in line with the researcher and research group being assessed, and all the process and criteria are defined in advance so that they are transparently accessible on our website when the call is opened. The review was already before these commitments mainly based on qualitative peer review of the research plan. But of course, we do have these funding schemes where we review the applicants themselves more than the research plan. And then this responsibility theme is very important. The reviewers that we are inviting to review are esteemed researchers in their field or otherwise regarded as peers in terms of the application. And 99% of our peer reviewers are not Finnish, they are international reviewers. And the applications are typically reviewed in panels, and additional methods can be used when we see it needed, such as interviews or rebuttal processes. And after the funding decisions, the names of the reviewers are available to the applicants, and the list of the names, current positions, and the institutions are published on our websites. And that was already before DORA and before CoARA. And what happened when we renewed our principles in 21? This is how we advise our reviewers, and I have linked these ARRA core commitments, so it's maybe easier to follow how we have taken these commitments into account in our process. So we ask reviewers to consider the content and the quality of publications rather than their number or venue of publication or the impact of the journals in which they were published. And we require responsible use of metrics if used at all. So specifically, the journal-based metrics is not allowed at all in the review process, but also citation metrics should be used responsible way, because it's not the direct sign of the impact of the research or quality of the research. And we ask the reviewers to consider the value and impact of all research outputs, not only publications. And we ask them to be sensitive to legitimate delays in publications due to personal factors like parental leave, etc. And throughout the review, we are asking them to consider the applicant's career stage. And this is how we instruct our reviewers. And how do we instruct the applicants? We have a CV template which reflects various outputs and also activities in research career. We ask the applicants to list and highlight 10 key publications and 10 other research outputs, and also to justify how these outputs are meaningful for their career or for the research plan that they are presenting. We still ask the complete publication list, but it shouldn't include any metrics in that document. And we also have implemented a narrative CV in 2 of our research funding schemes, Academy Research Fellowships and Academy Professorships. And in addition, we train, guide, and try to reach out our community throughout various activities. So we improve our guidelines all the time. We organize instructive webinars for the applicants. We have this Ask and Apply called seminar series for applicants. We organize webinars for reviewers, and we also organize internal training for our decision-making bodies, but also to our admin staff. And we also update our websites. We have blog posts, and we collect feedback throughout our process, from our reviewers, from our applicants, from our decision-making bodies, and try to improve the guidelines we are giving all the time. And through that, we monitor our activities. And we are also quite active nationally and internationally in networks which are developing these responsible research activities. So in Europe and internationally, I think the CoARA and Science Europe networks are the main and most important networks. But also in Finland, we have this national steering group on responsible evaluation of researchers. and also Finnish national chapter with CoARA national chapter, which are the main platforms where we have the discussion internally in Finland. And on last slide, I would like to share our documentation on the topic. So I will share these slides, and you can find all the guidelines I have been mentioning, the strategy, our action plan, and the outreach blogs and websites from this list. And I'm happy to tell you more if you need any other further information. So thank you very much for this possibility.
Thanks a lot, Kata-Riina, for this rich source of inspiration. We keep traveling across the CoARA countries, so we travel just a bit on the south, and our next presenter will be Matthias Kiesselbach from DFG. Once again, don't forget your questions to Kata-Riina. And yes, I forgot to say, but I think you are Zoom native, so you do this anyway. Please feel free to express your appreciation to the speakers in any preferred mode. So, Matthias, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks very much, Erzsébet. So, thank you very much for having me. My name is Matthias Kiesselbach. I represent the German Research Foundation. And let me also share some slides to help me convey my short message. So this will be about our action plan, the DFG's action plan. This talk is basically divided into 4 short sections. So first one is the action plan that we have submitted and published in a nutshell. Then I just want to reflect a little bit about on how the action planning can be a helpful sort of tool for intra-organizational deliberation about how we work, then a bit on the challenges and lessons learned, and finally, what we see as the future now for research assessment. So let me start with our action plan. And here, let me just start with telling you just a little bit about who we are, the German Research Foundation. So we are a funder, the funding agency, the main funding agency in Germany for basic research, or as I write here, curiosity-driven research, basically in all areas of science and the humanities. We have a pretty large budget, around 4 billion euros annually. And we are different from other funders in that we are, and this is really not typical, we are an association with members. And our members are basically the larger German universities, some research institutes such as Max Planck, academies, no individual persons, so only institutions. Our funding decisions are science-driven, so our review boards, those are the boards that prepare all the discussions. They're exclusively scientists elected by the scientific communities. And then we have decision-making boards with scientists who are appointed by the member organizations, and they are in the majority. So the representatives of the governments who give us our money, they are in the minority and are happy to be so. We also have a mandate to work on developing the framework conditions of research, and under this umbrella, basically, we are active in the CoARA, among other things. So that's the background of who we, as the German Research Foundation, who we are and how we work. And now to the action plan, to our CoARA action plan. Here I should say there is a bit of background to that. And basically, we think that we have been in alignment with the spirit of CoARA even before the CoARA came into existence. So we have a sort of a tradition of qualitative review that's long been established at the DFG. A side note, of course, that's easier for a project funder that receives projects than for other kinds of organizations. We've also implemented some measures to become, so to speak, even better at qualitative review and broad review just shortly before the CoARA started. So we introduced a CV template with optional narrative elements, not completely narrative, but hybrid, so some optional narrative elements. and we also changed what counts as a publication. So we actually work very similar to the Finnish agency, Kata-Riina. I just learned that we also have 10 classical peer-reviewed entries, and then 10 other entries. And the second field is protected from being crowded out by journal publications. So these measures have been introduced even before the CoARA in September 22. So then why do we support CoARA if we think we've already been in line with it? Well, basically to move global assessment culture forward. And also, I sort of say this off the record, we also thought that, at least at the beginning of the process, it's better to be part of the conversation than to not be part of it and to be confronted with results that you can't influence. But of course, as we worked in the CoARA, we also noticed that there are actually a lot of things that even an organization that thinks it's already in line can learn a lot. So we also want to learn from others, and we are learning from others. We have been involved in the development of CoARA from the beginning as a member of the German Alliance of Science Organizations, which was invited to comment on the drafts and work a little bit on the implementation. And then we have been a founding member of the CoARA in December 22. So that's the background to all of our action planning. Now to the action plan itself. So how have we done it, or how did we write it? Basically, we started with what the CoARA Secretariat provides, namely the guidelines. And we basically copied them, made a template of that, and then filled it out. So this is sort of a bit of hands-on information of how it can easily be done. I want to stress that we took the liberty of dwelling a little bit more on the starting point than perhaps we were supposed to, because most of what we've done on the field of research assessment reform or responsible research assessment actually came before the CoARA. So we allowed ourselves to write that down. So in the first bits here, reflection on strategy and change of approach, we stated a little bit our philosophy, the long-standing practices and qualitative evaluation that I just sketched just a minute ago, and described in some detail our 22 measures, so the hybrid CV template and the novelties about what counts as a publication. On the second item here, involvement of the institutional community, we were in the position to explain that we are a community-owned organization. So everything that we do already has the institutional stakeholders on board, sort of by default. The key challenges to address here, the main point that we make is a sort of a general cultural inertia that we experience as well. And then come the 10 commitments of the CoARA, the 4 core commitments, and then the 6 other commitments. On the 4 core commitments, and perhaps I should just really run through this and not dwell on each one in detail. We have had a series of webinars for the review boards. We had a very sort of fruitful internal discussion, and we continue to have these internal discussions with all of our science officers on how to handle individual questions and problems in research assessment. The ranking commitment is not really applicable to the DFG. And then on the other commitments, there are a number of things that we have planned to do. And perhaps you just, if you're interested in this, you can find our action plan. It's already published on the space that Erzsébet told you. This is the Synodo space where all the action plans are. And I'm also happy to explain a little bit more in the Q&A if you want. But what's perhaps more interesting is that CoARA, the action planning, is actually very useful for intra-organization deliberation. And now I have a problem, Erzsébet. My PowerPoint just crashed. But let me just pull it up again.
Okay, maybe that's the easiest,
otherwise,
but in case you need it from our side.
For some reason, it doesn't work well together with Zoom.
Okay,
and
interesting.
I'm almost back here.
Yeah.
You should see it now again.
Yes, we see it in a presenter mode, so like maybe you just need to make a, or Matthias, I can also, yes, exactly. That's the twist.
Okay.
Yes.
There we go. Super annoying. Sorry about that. So it was really interesting to work on. Oh, no, it's crashing again. So sorry about that. Do you want to pull it up, or should I just go on?
Sure. No, I have it at
from
hand.
here.
No worries.
Thank you.
No worries. But then stop sharing your.
Yeah.
I just replaced the current share, and then pull it up for you, and then you need to shout next.
Thank you.
Yes.
So basically, this was a really sort of good exercise. Thank you. Yeah, this is the one. And here you can perhaps press forward a couple of times, because I just show here. So this is where I work in my division, and you can see I involved quite a few colleagues in writing this action plan. So what I first did, I talked to all the colleagues who handle the review boards and who basically work on receiving and processing the applications and then inviting reviewers and so on. I got all their feedback. That provided me with all the information for a first draft. Then I involved some units that are sort of key in the German Research Foundation. So there is one unit that's basically responsible for our reporting and our statistics. They were the first to be involved. Then our strategic unit and our press unit. They introduced a number of changes. Then I basically got the green light from all the heads of the departments. They also had some sort of questions and suggested some revisions. And finally, I got green light from the executive board. And now you see our organization has about 900 employees, so we are relatively large. And it took a lot of time and effort to really get the action plan in shape in such a way that everybody knows what we're doing. Everybody thinks that the efforts that are in it are appropriate and that they're worded correctly. But I find, and I think my colleagues do as well, that this sort of complex thing was really worth the effort. So we are now, as a large organization, more or less have everybody on board with the CoARA. And I don't think this was necessarily the case before this action planning exercise. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then you can continue. So this is now the challenges and lessons part. So at the beginning, not everyone in our organization, in the DFG, but perhaps the same is true for you as well, knows about CoARA. I think it's a good idea in the context of the action plan, but also beyond, to talk about CoARA informally as much as possible with as many relevant colleagues as possible. That really helps. There are some sort of questions, but also worries about the CoARA, and I think this is the way to address them. You can also do it in the way that we did. Use the action plan to highlight what's already in place, and what's going well. That may be interesting for people outside of your organization, but also helps get a positive view of the CoARA among your colleagues. if you're enthusiastic about assessment reform, you can really use these discussions to get your colleagues on board. So this is basically my main lessons, my main sort of idea. Yeah, maybe your colleagues will come to the view that the aims really are worth it. And if they don't, they can better understand what this is all about. A visible CoARA action plan is also helpful perhaps for recruiting efforts because it shows that your organization is at the forefront of a responsible research assessment. I think this is probably mostly true for universities and for research institutions. Yeah, and maybe, your organization, like the DFG, is already more or less aligned with the spirit of CoARA and doesn't require huge changes. And then the CoARA action plan can be, a short document which you use for advertising purposes. Yeah, next slide, please. And then I will also come to an end. So there are a few things that we are now sort of as the DFG planning to do in this context, looking inward and looking outward. So looking inward, we want to keep the topic of research assessment on people's minds. And by people here, I mean mainly the 70 science officers in the DFG who moderate the review sessions and who invite reviewers. It's really important for them to have this topic on their minds all the time. Keep the discussion going and improving our practices here and there. So one of the items that we had a very lively discussion on a few months ago is how to deal with indirect markers of scientific quality or expertise. So you don't necessarily read things like the H index or so, but you read a lot or you hear a lot. This person has published, 4 times recently in Science or Nature or Cell. What do you do with this kind of information? And we take it, the discussion really was lively, actually pretty controversial. The consensus that we found in the end is that our job as science officers is to contextualize this kind of information. So how good is it in this particular field or that field? And also if somebody writes, for example, if a reviewer writes, well, great person, ERC Consolidator grant in, 2024. Is this a great thing in this particular field? Is this perhaps expected among excellent scientists in this field? So this is basically a kind of discussion that we had, and here's the consensus. Yeah, looking outward, we want to continue working in the 3 CoARA working groups to which we contribute. We also want to continue working in the CoARA national chapter. And basically, our plan is to help put out the message to other organizations in Germany and elsewhere. There are still a few large players in the German landscape which have not yet joined, but are now thinking about doing that. Yeah, thanks very much, and sorry for the technical mishap. That's all from me.
No worries, Matthias. Thanks a lot for sharing also the inward perspective. Extremely interesting, I think. And so now we are zooming out of individual country level for national funders. And quickly, I give the floor to Georgios, who is going to introduce the European Commission's approach to action planning and implementing CoARA at home.
We can't hear you yet, Georgios.
Yes. Maybe I'm just checking whether you are... Georgios, you need to unmute yourself.
Indeed, that is important. So, thanks very much, Erzsébet, for putting this webinar together, and thanks for all the colleagues for presenting and for being here today. I will briefly say a few words about the action plan of the European Commission to implement the agreement. And I will go agreement by agreement. I mean, the European Commission, as you aware, all of you, it has been involved from the beginning, from the outset, in initiative of putting together this coalition and of having an agreement with actual commitments that would require implementation activities. And this is because we have always believed that we need to move away from the present system of research assessment, which is very much premised and based on metrics and indicators regarding publications and factors, impact factors and such things. And generally, everything is focused on what one publishes and where, and to a system that actually recognizes the diversity of roles, contributions, and activities that researchers play in their careers and perform, and that also gives more recognition to the different outputs and the different elements that go beyond the metrics and that are more intrinsic to the quality of the research proposals and to the research that is put into place and conducted by researchers. I think this is a very healthy move forward, and that will allow research to become, on the one hand, more responsible, but also achieve greater impact, while, of course, ensuring the highest quality. So a lot of the elements that I will present were already in either achieved by the Commission or in process when the efforts of putting together the agreement began. So I will go through them, and then at the end I will refer to some potential future actions. And then I can discuss a little bit about what this involves internally. You can find the action plan of the Euro Commission easily on the Commission's website, or of course in Zenodo. It is a plan that was put together in collaboration with colleagues from different services, and which of course has the approval of the Director General and the Commissioner. So commitment one. So what we have done is that we integrated a more diverse array of contribution and recognition of careers in the award criteria of Horizon Europe. For example, the quality and appropriateness of open science practices and the consideration of the gender dimension is in Horizon Europe assessed as part of the project methodology, which is crucially itself part of the excellence award criterion. And this has been a major step forward in Horizon Europe in relation to previous framework programs. Capacity of the individual participants and the consortium itself is assessed under the quality and efficiency of the implementation award criterion. And
Georgios, I'm really sorry. Could you perhaps go into presenter mode, because we still see the first slide, yes. the title slide, the action plan by the EC.
Yes. Sorry, Georgios. You
bizarre.
Just need to, go to the.
No, I am in presenter mode. I don't see anything else other than the. Maybe you can share it, because I had this problem in a previous meeting and I don't know why it's happening. I am in presenter mode. I see only the PowerPoint, nothing else. And the only option that I have is to stop sharing, nothing else. I've clicked the presentation mode already. So there's nothing I can do. Maybe you can share it for me, Erzsébet.
If I have your slides.
If you don't, then I will send it immediately. I apologize for this. I had it just before. I think Anna was in that meeting. And she can attest to that. It's I don't know why this happens.
Do you need a bit of a time, Georgios? Do you think we should, in the meantime, take a couple of questions to Matthias and Kata-Riina, and then?
Not really. I mean, it depends on how easy it is for you to open this and share it. I just sent it to you.
Perfect. Okay. Then it's there in no time. Yeah, I got it. Okay, perfect. I will just download it and. Okay. So we are exposed to the slowness of my computer. But okay, I have it open. I just need to close the other ones. Keep the only one, and then we are more flexible. You will just tell me next, Georgios.
Many thanks.
Just okay. So where were we? We haven't yet gone through the commitments.
Okay, right? Commitment 1. So yeah, we integrated the recognition of more diverse contributions and the careers in the award criteria. We integrated more diverse contributions and careers in application and the reporting forms of projects funded in Horizon Europe. For example, we now ask applicants to list up to 5 relevant achievements. These include also other outputs and publications. And we ask them to deliver data management plans and to describe open science practices as part of their applications. Other elements that are in relation to Commitment 1 and have been put in place relate to the obligation for the research organizations to adopt a gender equality plan as partners in the projects. And in parallel to that, as you are probably most of you are aware, we are continuing to fund and set up the Open Research Europe platform, which is a peer review publishing service for the grantees, but generally open, but it started for the grantees, but it's generally open for researchers around Europe. Next slide, please. So commitments 2 and 3. In relation to commitment 2, of course, we put in place a robust peer review of research proposals based on well-defined award criteria, and these are excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. We put in place processes to ensure the balanced composition of peer reviewers in terms of various skills, experiences, gender, geographical diversity, and knowledge and disciplines. We endorsed DORA in 2022. And in relation to commitment 3, when the capacity of the individual participants and consortium is assessed, the journal impact factor, of course, should not be used to assess the applicants. And we give relevant guidance to peer reviewers on that. In that regard, instruct them to disregard this impact factor. Next slide, please. Commitment 4, of course, that does not apply here. The Commission does not make use of rankings of research organizations in the assessment of proposals. In regard to commitment 5, we contributed in kind to facilitate the preparation of the agreement and the CoARA coalition, as I alluded to before. Of course, the Commission does support financially the operation of CoARA through the framework program, and also through the framework program, it supports institutional changes which relate to research assessment in beneficiaries. Next slide, please. Commitment 6, we ensure that the criteria and processes for the next FP10, for the next framework program, we wish to ensure that will be in line with the principles and commitments of the ARRA. I mean, we already have a good acquis, but we need also to improve in certain ways. Commitment 7, widely communicated, of course, about the award criteria in Horizon Europe and the novelties that they entailed, in particular to the open science practices, which include public engagement, other than the more strict open access issues and activities. We provide guidance to applicants and, of course, to the peer reviewers about these elements. Next slide. Commitment 8, the CoARA, we co-chair the group with our German colleagues and our Swedish colleagues, the group of funders on improving practices in the assessment of research proposals. In the recent past, we initiated multilateral dialogues on values and principles for R&I, which included open science and research excellence. These were organized and the materials published in the outcomes published in 2023. We generally do support a global dialogue on this. And in that vein, we co-chaired the sub-working group of the G7 Open Science Working Group, which focuses on research assessment. And we joined the Global Research Council Working Group on Responsible Research Assessment. And of course, we, together with member states and stakeholders, promote research assessment through the ARRA policy agenda both the one that has just ended and the new one that will be officially announced today on the 23, for 20 years, 25 to 27. Next slide, please. Commitment 9, we report on the progress made with this action plan within the timeline established. And commitment 10, we initiated the funding of projects that contribute to risk assessment reforms by piloting practices, gathering evidence, supporting data. Of course, you probably know some of them. Some of you know some of these projects like Opus and Graspos, etc. And there will be more funding actions coming in the new framework programs that will also have an element of other than promoting institutional changes, but also gathering evidence on necessary evidence base in order to advance with the goals of CoARA and the agreement. At the first stage, we already published a fact-finding study last year, which is a really, really good study, and I invite all of you to have a look, which aimed to map and to assess FP-funded projects, including university alliances, in relation to their actions and the findings on reforming research assessment. So this is, in essence, what has taken place at the European Commission. And now we can move to the next slide, where we can discuss a bit on potential future steps. This should involve potential improvements to the award criteria and recognizing diversity of contributions, also to the information requested from applicants, recognizing again the diversity of value contributions, talents, and careers. The improvements on the reporting forms and importantly on the key impact pathways, where we need to ensure that we avoid the use of inappropriate indicators. Of course, ARRA is still being supported and will do so. It is also part of the ARRA policy agenda, generally enhancing and promoting and fostering non-profit high-quality scholarly publishing in the era. Potential improvements in the selection of peer reviewers. And together with all of this, we will continue to support the operation of CoARA and institutional changes around Europe and other places through the framework program. We will act, and we do act as observers to the steering board, and we participate in the working group activities. And we would like also to see potential improvements in the guidance and training. This relate also to the bullets above, guidance and training, and notably on gender equality provided to peer reviewers. I think there's a final slide with some concluding elements. Again, we want to continue engagement in Europe and globally on mutual learning and policy exchanges. We work with the member states, as I said, in the ARRA forum in order to implement the ARRA policy agenda. We want to work closer with the public engagement and community, as this is to make this more intrinsic part of their assessment and the responsible research assessment as a valuable research approach within research organizations. And we would like to identify potential R&I actions that would be needed, as I mentioned before, on locating, identifying, bringing to the fore and highlighting knowledge gaps in improving assessment methods and barriers to change. In terms of steps, I mean, institutionally, this will have to relate to the next framework program, in as far as this will take a shape that will be recognizable. But in any case, according to the latest information, and as much as we know, we are probably heading towards something self-standing as an FP, which to us is good news. Of course, this is all very iffy at the moment. We will see how it plays out. In terms of institutional coordination, I mean, this is like, I imagine something that is easily understandable. It's because it's familiar to you from your own institutions. We will have to work together, collaborate, deliberate with colleagues in the in the services which oversee the implementation and the processes of setting up the criteria and monitoring the key IPs, and generally that have their remit on the operation of the work program in that regard, of launching the calls and assessing the operation of the framework program and being responsible for the processes that relate to the evaluation. So we will have to sit on the table with our colleagues and see what further steps we can take that can serve the vision of CoARA and where we can improve. And in the meantime, I think we will also try to launch new studies on fact finding, which will give us a better sense, or in any case, evidence on what improvements we can make as a funder. And with that, I can end. Thank you.
Thanks, Georgios, and also thanks for sharing future NAS and policy highlights. I will stop sharing at this point, because now we turn to you, dear audience, and it's time for your questions. So questions can come into parallel streams, actually 3. If you would like to speak up, raise your hand, virtual hand, please. And you can also leave questions in the Q&A. In addition, we will also keep an eye on the chat. So while you're thinking about your questions, let me open the Q&A with the first anonymous question that we received through the Q&A. Great presentations, thank you. Can you please reflect if the commitments were enough to reflect all the changes you were doing on research assessment, or if there were changes that were beyond them? Great question, and I forward it to our panelists. I don't know which one of you, Kata-Riina, Matthias, or Georgios, would like to address it first.
Well, maybe I can start. We have made plenty of changes in our assessment processes, and they are not reflected in our action plan. However, those changes are not directly linked to the CoARA commitments as such, but of course, all the changes in the process and for example, how the review panels are defined, or what kind of reforms we do to the funding schemes, all these are linked to each other. And that's a very good question, and I must say that those links are not reflected in our action plan clearly. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Kata-Riina. I think there is an interest into the resources that you have been listing in the last page of your presentation. So yes, indeed, we are going to streamline and forward it to our attendees. Georgios.
I think the changes that I mentioned, and which pertain to the current framework program, are largely in line with the agreement and CoARA. And I think also the next steps will be in that direction. So I don't think that there is something that took place, at least to my knowledge, that was not within that vision, to be honest, or at least not within the commitments and the larger engagement.
Okay, thanks a lot, Georgios. I see that Kata-Riina would like to add something.
Yeah, maybe I would like to add after hearing Georgios' comment that yes, the changes we have done are as well aligned with the CoARA and these principles, but we didn't maybe open those in CoARA Action Plan, as we didn't see that they were directly connected to that commitment, but they were done in other purposes and maybe linked to more like open access policies or then our practicalities during the assessment process. But they are aligned definitely.
Thanks a lot, Kata-Riina. I see a meta-research related second question in the chat that is exclusively addressed to me. Can you explain slide 7 from Erzsébet's presentation, mostly the organization types? Okay, there you go. So I will pull it up again very briefly. Sorry, yes. So there is no disrupting novelty here, I would say. First of all, as I said, in collaboration with CNRS, we are developing 2 kinds of analysis platforms for action plan. This is the one called LODEX. It gives statistical snapshots of the growth of the action plan records that we received in the Zenodo community. The other one that James briefly presented to you is a keyword search, interactive keyword search data visualization tool based on the full text of this corpus. But here it's just from metadata snippets. So you can see country information and see which country submitted the highest volume of action plans so far. So Finland is absolutely kudos, thanks to the great efforts of the Finnish Federation of Fluent Society and Finnish Research Council. So Kata-Riina, it's a kudos to your organization as well. And on the right, these are the CoARA organization types. So the same types of organization, the exact same classification who we have with membership data. What we do is we keep track of organization's action plan against our master membership database, and the membership categorization is coming from there. The 5 NA node data is a bit of a noise in the pipeline where organizations don't clearly indicate the types of organization. But the rest, what I wanted to highlight on this one is the 14 action plans that we received from funders. I think I dare to say the receipt of action plans is proportionate to the generic per type organization constitution of the coalition, with one notable exception, that is, in general, proportionally, funders are a little bit more overrepresented, so doing their due diligence a little bit better than other types of organizations. And those organizations who are not in direct charge of research assessment are a little bit underrepresented. In the future, we are also going to organize webinars for them because they also have to submit action plans, importantly. And so we will keep supporting them on how to tweak this exercise in case they are not in charge of research assessment. Georgios.
Yeah, no, I find it very interesting, but I would like maybe to know just a couple of words more on the word mining and its aims. I mean, this is an important fact-finding exercise potentially, or in any case, it should be. So I would like to know just very briefly, not to take up much time, what are the aims of the thing? Because it's one thing to say, okay, it comes from this country or this type of organization, which is all good and done. But I mean, the point is the more detailed aspect of it, the content, and what is the objectives.
Well, Georgios, I could speak very lengthily about it, and more importantly, we will
not necessarily
publish
I mean, you don't have to
about this in the CoARA website.
You don't have to speak very lengthy about it. Just two words on what is the objectives.
Yes. Let me highlight the 3 main aims very quickly. First, as I said, keeping track of the progress of the action plans and gaining insights about this progress. Second, to do a bit of a mining work to extract tools and resources that signatories and members rely on and refer to in their action plans. And maybe the third one is the most exciting, that is to gain insights of the emerging topics, emerging correlations. For instance, we see how many times they mention HRS4R, so to what extent the reform is addressed on the level of HR experts within universities and so on. And so the idea with keeping the analysis platform interactive is to all interested meta-researchers or CoARA members should be able to bring their research questions to this corpus, turn into a keyword search, translate them, and gain insights. It can be a funder. I need to see if I'm a national funder or national agency. I want to see how many universities refer to my policies or to mention my name in their action plans and so on. So there are lots of possible case studies we pre-identified. More about this to come. We are also going to organize webinars. We already did one to working group and national chapter chairs, but to other smaller communities, core implementation communities of CoARA and CoARA. It's coming soon. Okay, let me try to accommodate all your other questions. There is a question from Santiago Perez. What's your experience in creating dialogue with national ministries, if you do, that set up legal terms for assessing researchers' careers? Again, I direct this question to our two national funder panelists.
I'm not raising my hand because it doesn't apply to us at all. We don't have a national ministry that says how we should do things.
Yeah, exactly. It's less of a legal matter in Germany, as we discussed in the national chapter chair. But yes. I see a hand among the audience, but not anymore. Okay. Kata-Riina, I don't know whether you have anything to say to this.
No, not really at this point.
Okay. Then I just quickly add to the presenter that it's mainly the CoARA national chapters who are envisioned to keep some sort of a synergy and coordination to other key national actors and to those actors who are in charge of ARRA framework implementation. And there are ongoing efforts towards synergies in this respect. Okay, we have two other AI-related questions that I take the liberty to merge them. How does AI impact research assessment? We question. To what extent we can trust AI tools to assist in decision-making with the research assessment processes? Dear panelist colleagues, I don't think we can conduct any such panels without reflections on AI. So, and I looking at the time, I also see that you won't have time for lengthy elaborations, but maybe to accommodate some brief reflections on this big and complex topic. James.
Maybe just from Science Europe's side, we see this coming up a lot in our discussions. We are setting up a new working group on AI and its links to the processes of our organizations. Obviously, it has many potential impacts and challenges, but also some opportunities. And we see quite already diverse approaches within our membership. And we've had discussions with organizations in China and Japan as well on this. And so I think there is going to be a big impact of AI across research assessment processes and different approaches taken within different CoARA members. And I think relating that back to the action plans, where it's mentioned in action plans will be a really interesting, provide us with a means of having an overview of the different stances that organizations are taking. We already hear AI related to language assistance in applications. Some funding organizations allow that where it's acknowledged, some don't. Some organizations are exploring AI in reviewer selection processes, or at least the first stage in that. So there's some examples, but I think relating that back to action plans, as I said, I think they can be a useful tool for understanding where organizations are thinking about opportunities and where they're thinking about their challenges associated with AI.
Thanks a lot, James. Kata-Riina.
Yes, a very topical issue. We are also very much working on these AI questions, and it's coming. We wanted it or not, and we see a lot of potential on these AI tools. But the main issue is that most of our material that we are processing are confidential material, and the use of the AI tools which are now available are not possible for us, and the use is strongly restricted. And this is the reason that we are actually starting to develop our own tools currently, and we have projects ongoing how we can advance and automatize our research application process with the tools that we develop by ourselves. I'm not sure if we can talk about the AI as such, but the algorithms and sort of automatization we are developing quite strongly currently. And this is maybe one of the points that I mentioned, that we are developing our procedures, but these are not mentioned in our action plan.
Thanks a lot, Kata-Riina, for elaborating. It's interesting to gain insights of what are the ongoing efforts, organizational efforts on this. So, dear panelists, dear attendees, our time is up. So without further ado, let me once again say a big thank you to all our panelists. Say another big thank you for all of you who attended today's sessions. You will receive follow-up documentation from where you can pick up the resources. If you have any questions in the meantime or afterwards, I think you know the contact details of CoARA very well, most notably Secretariat at coara.eu. And see you if you are interested in this just this afternoon in 1.5 hours, I think. We are going to launch a brokerage event for the second call of working groups, kind of a networking event for interested parties to join forces. And so if you are interested, you're most welcome to quickly register and attend. Otherwise, CoARA member representatives of CoARA member organizations are very much looking forward to seeing you at the upcoming CoARA General Assembly on the 23rd of June, so just in a month's time. Thanks once again, and yes, let's stay in touch. Have a great weekend later today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.